Hey everybody, it's Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Melsner.
Hey, it's been a long time.
Yeah, this is episode 185 of the Oddcast. Victoria's exam, her practical exam, is finally over.
Did we even do any episodes when I was between exams?
Yeah, because the early July or early June was the last one that we did.
Okay, yeah. All my exams are done.
Yeah. That's exciting. Now we have a brief window period where you and I can enjoy things again before you start your master's degree.
A month and a half long before I start my master's, and then you'll never see me again.
Oh, so sad. And you'll also be farther away, twice as far away,
I will be farther away,
and in a
but it's
different
not like
time
we can
zone.
record in person now, so it doesn't matter. There will be a time zone difference, though.
Yeah,
And full disclosure, I will forget every single second. It's not being directly reminded to me.
yeah. I mean, it's not the first time that one of us lived in that same time zone while the other was here, while
That's true. Now
having
we're
to
just trading off who lives in a different time zone.
having to record through that and whatnot.
Yeah, it's inconvenient because, like, everywhere I've ever
Has
lived
been in the same time zone.
temporarily
Yeah,
or stayed has literally always been in the same time zone.
yeah. That
Like,
was
when
me
we're
as
in
well.
California
Up until
or Spokane or here or at the lake or Fort Steele or, like, anywhere, it's always the same time zone. That's why I like being in California a lot. That's one of the reasons. I don't have to worry about time zone differences. It's nice. But, like, now I'm going to be in a different time zone. It's only by an hour, but, like, still.
yeah. Okay, so what are we talking about today, Victoria?
We're talking about. I can't remember the name of the first episode, but I know the one second name.
The morning.
Oh, the Morning Star. And then Lifted Out of Context, which is the OAC 2019 November and December episodes, back when the world was a simpler place,
Yeah,
but Cats was still out. So there was reason for fear. And Joker was still very, very popular, so even more reason for fear.
that does help put it in perspective, Victoria. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You know, every season has its trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So episode 872, and we'll be talking about 2019 AIOC as a whole, obviously, because we're wrapping up the year. Happy New Year's, everyone! 2020, we're going into a new year. Lots of positivity. Everything is going to be normal and great, and we'll be able to leave our houses.
I don't want to talk about this anymore.
So,
I heard of a Bim Bam bit yesterday from 2016,
Mhm.
and the boys started the episode by talking about the limpos and how excited they were. And Griffin was like, "Man, I can't wait to be in those 2020 limpos. People don't know where it's going to be yet, but like I'm looking forward to participating." And I was like, "Oh, no."
Aw. So, 872, The Morning Star, written by Phil Lawler. You wanted me doing the descriptions, yes?
Yeah, can I just first say, have you ever heard the phrase like the Morning Star in other contexts?
Yeah.
Like that's also the a nickname that people have given to the devil. So
I think you're
I
right. I mean, when I think
yeah,
about
no,
it,
I know I'm right. I know I'm right.
when I think about it, I think about like the mace, like
Yeah.
a mace when it's like on a solid stick, but it
No,
has
I know
like
what a
spikes
morning
coming
star
out of the
is.
ball. I
It's
think it's also a
yeah.
type of poisonous spider, venomous spider.
No, could has anyone eaten it to find out?
Yeah. What if we both bite each other and neither of us die? That's kinky. Um,
That's correlation, not causation.
yeah, that's witchcraft. Yeah,
Anyway, what
I mean, I
happens?
think like the general meaning of it is like it's like the last star to like disappear,
No, I
like it's
mean
like
it's
signaling the
also an
morning.
expression.
Yeah,
I
I
was just
know, but
saying.
no, yeah, I believe you are correct, and
No,
you know that
like
you're
I said, I
correct.
know I'm correct. I just finished reading all the Shadowhunter Chronicles.
Yeah, yeah, yes, it is kind of weird now that you point that.
Yeah.
Um, so it's also funny because when Whit used the phrase "the Morning Star" at the end of the episode, he was referring to Whitcliffe, who is not in this episode. You'd think it would be like a nickname given to Sir John, who is the person who was actually in the episode.
The guy who was talking at the end of the episode, who was like part of that organization, was that like the actual guy, or
I doubt it.
Because I was listening for his name in the credits. I think I heard it.
Probably not.
Also, he was like, "I was here the whole time," and like, there.
We'll do the description first.
Okay, yeah, you talk about that first.
Okay,
we'll get back to
it. Matthew is feeling very laissez-faire about like making sure that he knows where his Bible is, and like I do understand his reasoning. He's like, I mean, there's like 18 Bibles in my house and on my phone and infinitely on the internet, so if I forget it somewhere...
He didn't even say the internet. He said my house, here at Wits End, and other ones I can buy, or at the church. And I was like, boy, what about the internet? You can literally look up any verse.
But no, he is right. It's like, you know, and I understand, like, obviously, you know, you still want to care for them, especially, like, if it's, like, I have a study Bible that's, like, all notes in it that you're not going to get if you're just, like, looking up on, like...
When they were looking at his Bible and they were talking about it, and I was thinking, like, please, God, let it be, like, an adventure Bible. So it has, like, all these, like, cool things, or, like, one of those ones from, like, the early 2000s where it has, like, people riding skateboards and pictures and stuff like that. And they're like, hey, Christians, here's a cool tip. And I was like, please let it be one of those Bibles.
Putting on a bicycle helmet, and it's like, make sure you're wearing the helmet of truth.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Okay, so, Whit is like, I think Matthew needs to appreciate, like, the privilege that we have in this period of history to have access to scripture that we can read, and so he sends him back to the early 15th century London, so that he can, you know, see this, like, pre-Tyndale era of, like, the church banning any access to English translations of scripture or to lay people being able to directly read or interpret scripture themselves.
So, like, the King Henry they were talking about, that was the 8th, though, right?
I have no idea.
Because every single time they're like, yeah, King Henry, that's a cool guy. I was like, kill him.
I mean, here's the thing, Victoria. There were at least 7 other King Henrys. So.
I know, and they never specified which one. Do you think, like, maybe they didn't know?
Given that it was the 1400s,
like, they just guessed.
I'm pretty sure that's too early for Henry VIII.
Yeah. I don't like Henry VIII. I've listened to 6 a lot of times. You've probably never heard 6, have you?
No.
Do you know what it is?
I think so, yeah. Anyways, so he meets, like, he sees an Orthodox priest who's preaching, like, the need for...
An unorthodox priest.
Well, no.
I don't know what Orthodox priest means.
The unorthodoxy would come with the Reformation. He was the old-fashioned one. He's the Orthodox.
I don't know what
Orthodox means, like, normal and, like, old-fashioned, regimented. So... he is preaching, like, yeah, indulgences. The only way you can confess your sins is through a priest, and God will bless you proportional to the amount of money that you give to the church and stuff. And Matthew's like, no, here's my Bible. And then he, like...
He hits him with it.
He attacks...
Matthew does shove him.
He does, yeah. He shoves the priest, and then the knight... Sir John of Goodcastle, Sir John, knight and absentia to the Rome of Goodcastle, shows up, and he rescues Matthew, and he's like, yeah, I'm a Lollard, we follow Wycliffe, and I'm about to go get tried for heresy by the Bishop Convocation, and so they go, and he does, and they get locked in the Tower of London.
I thought Lollard stood for something else. I might have been thinking of a different word.
Might have been thinking Luddite, maybe?
No. I thought it meant, like, lazy person or
well,
something.
There's something similar to that, yeah. I know, there's a word that sounds like it.
Is it Lollard?
It's Lollard.
I think it's Lollard and not Laward or whatever.
There's also Dullard, but that's similar.
No, that's a different letter.
No, but yeah, I think there is one that you're saying, yeah, that is very similar to it. Anyways. So, Washington Tower, London, and then they get freed, and they're like, yeah, we're going to lead a rebellion, and then Sir John is like, I'm going to kidnap the president, and then
then that's where that text I sent you. I sent Devin a text, and I was like, big book of secrets energy here.
I'm going to kidnap him and then convince him and stuff, but then they got ambushed, and then they burned John at the stake and Matthew's Bible, and then he came back, and then the guy who was real, the guy with one line was like, hey, I'm a real chap, blokes.
At one point,
my name's Robbie Nolan.
Matthew's name early on in the episode when Matthew was being dragged off. I think he might have said, like, another line somewhere else. I think he had 3 lines total. So, like, this is what I was gonna get to. Like, with Samuel, the plot twist that, like, Sam is a real person in, what was it? Isaac the True Friend? Yeah. That was a big thing, because Sam was there for, like, the whole episode, basically. Yeah. And then you have, like, that happens in another episode, too, doesn't it?
Fairly recently, yeah.
Yeah, what one was it?
I have absolutely no memory.
Okay. Well, that happened in, it also happened with Liz, more or less, when she did true. Hindsight.
It kind of happened.
It wasn't actually the real person, but the plot twist was like, oh, this is a real guy. And it's like, it's been done before. But the thing is, whenever this has been done before, it's always been done with someone who is, like, integral to the plot. Whereas this guy comes up, and I was just like, oh yeah, I kind of remember you having 1 or 2 lines.
It's not only someone who's, like, integral to the plot, but someone who's core to the purpose of it, in that, like, Sam wanted to make, like, a really close friend. He became friends with this fictional character, and then it turns out Sam was real. Like, I have a real friend now.
Usually centers around the relationship between these 2 people, and they get really close, and then you're like, I wish we could be friends, but I know you're not real. And then you come out of the program and you're like, oh, we are real. Let's be best friends.
And then Liz was like, I wish I, had the opportunity to, like, help this person, but they're just part of the program. And then what's like, Bazinga, this person is real. So, and then this was just like...
And just like,
hey,
when he came out, Robbie. My first thought was like, not only do I barely not remember you, you're also old, so you can't be best friends with this child like Sam was with Isaac.
So, the episode overall, I really liked it. I'm always glad of stories that highlight the importance of getting direct access to scripture, to direct interpretation, and taking our faith into our own hands and not relying on it being, like, super sifted layers and layers of others. I was expecting this to be an episode about William Tyndale based on, like, the description that I glanced going through it, which obviously we've already talked about before a little bit in When in Doubt, Pray. And I think also BTV, what was the Bond one?
Which one?
What's the band one?
Oh.
It's
Grace? No.
Yes, thank you. BTV Grace.
Yes. Okay, I didn't even have to look it up.
Was Tyndale in that one? I know.
Why was that one banned again?
Sorry?
Why was that one banned again?
Because of the stereotypical portrayal of Amish.
Oh. I mean, they've honestly done worse in...
They have.
Some episodes that haven't been banned, so...
It's true. So, anyways, this is pre-Tyndale time. Yeah, when you sent me that text that this episode was like National Treasure 2, Book of Secrets, I really was expecting...
I know, when you said, like, I haven't listened to it yet, I was thinking, like, oh, I probably just got his hopes up, like, really high.
Well, yeah, if I was like, oh, it's going to be some sort of, like, mystery action thing, and then I realized it was a historical one, I'm like, well, it must have to... And I was like, as I'm listening to it, I'm like, there's some sort of...
Where's the Illuminati?
There's some sort of, like... book that they need to, like, rescue that has, like, early translation notes for the Bible or something like that.
That would have been really cool.
I did not expect that the reference was kidnapping the King of England.
I brought up National Treasure to because I made like a we have to steal the Declaration of Independence joke at work a couple days ago, and then I realized my new coworker at the library has never seen any of the National Treasure movies. So then I just started like explaining the plots and stuff, except for really badly. And I was like, I'm not doing these justice at all. You have to watch them if you ever get the chance. And then, did I ever tell you that they're working on the third one?
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah, it's so funny to me because they were like, we'll make a third one when we have a plot that's good enough and
Yeah.
not before then. And then a couple weeks into quarantine, they're like, we're so bored, we just wrote National Treasure 3
Well, it's funny
after like
because
a decade.
I think Sage literally tweeted about their National Treasure rewrite AU earlier in the day yesterday before you texted me that
It's
thing.
National Treasure Week. What a good week to celebrate Nicolas Cage and his weird Illuminati background in film.
So, Wycliffe as a charity to support. Now, I couldn't find the bookmark that I have, so I can't make 100% certain, but I'm at least 90% sure that the Canadian branch of the Wycliffe Institute is who came to UBC to talk about their translation efforts a couple years ago, and like very inspiring speech that they gave. And I'm pretty sure I've talked about it in at least one previous episode of the Oddcast. And I specifically said in our predictions for this year that
we've reviewed When in Doubt Pray, so it could have been that one.
Well, I think it came up in, because we've had other episodes talking about like translation of scripture and stuff before, and like taking it in context and stuff. Like the episodes, I always want to call it Hidden in My Heart, but like the one with the girl who went all powerful using the Bible verses.
Let me check.
It's the same verse as Hidden in My Heart. It's like stored up treasures or something like that. Treasures in heaven.
So it has treasures in the title.
It was the November episode, I think, for that year. Treasures of the Heart. That's what it is.
Where your treasure is.
Yeah. I know what verse it comes from. Anyways, yeah, I might have talked about it then. So anyways, assuming this is the same group, the thing that really, really impressed me when they were talking about their efforts for translation is the emphasis on like the fact that languages are a very core part of our being and our culture, that like even though you can speak a lot of languages, that they're your mother tongue, they call it your heart language, and talk about how like so much of the way that you think and perceive the world is based on like the cultural context of your first language, regardless of if it's not even the main language that you speak anymore. And that's why it's so important that people are able to read in their own language and not just be taught English or taught French or taught, another main language where there's a translation access, whether it's the Bible or anything else. So that if you really want to understand it, you need to be reading it in your own language, because what language does God speak to us in? He speaks to us in the language that we speak.
That just makes me really bummed out that so many people had like their languages ripped away from them when they were colonized.
Exactly. And so that's why I really like this, because historically missions work has been so tied to like colonization and lots of like languages being destroyed, whether it's through like residential schools where like settlers were coming into indigenous areas and forcing them to learn English and like banning them from remembering their own languages, or other places where like missionaries would come in and be like, we need to teach you all English so that like you can read the Bible. But they made very clear that their focus is on like enriching and preserving the cultures, and that by translating the Bible, they have to like really understand and like fully create a dictionary and like a full comprehensive understanding for that language. And so it makes sure that they're not bulldozing over their culture, but they're preserving the history of that culture and that language so that it won't be lost. That's
pretty cool.
It is very cool. Which is why I was like so taken with that when they gave their presentation. I was like, that is really excellent.
I'm glad that you know some stuff about this group.
Well, like I said, if it's the same group. I looked at their website and like their statements, and there was enough phrasing that was like similar to the stuff that I remembered that I was like, I'm pretty sure that it's the right one. And
5 years from now, you find your bookmark. We're not even doing the Oddcast anymore, and you're like, darn it.
Yeah. Hopefully it's them. And it's funny because I brought it up when we were talking about the predictions based on the titles for this year in the AIOC, but it wasn't for this episode. It was for the next episode because it was called Lifted Out of Context.
I feel like this episode and the next episode like fit pretty well together, since that one's all about like comprehending of Bible verses, and this is about like comprehending the Bible as a whole through your like the language you speak.
Yeah, so I really like the episode. I like parts where we get to see history of like the internal struggles in the church, both like the early church and the later church, of like, church history, how it like, schismed on itself, and they had these conflicts over doctrine and stuff that led to where we are today, is important history to understand. Especially, I think, in a world where a lot of Western media tries to focus on this idea of like the persecution that the church supposedly faces in like the US and Canada and stuff, that it's important to look back historically and like see what like actual suppression looked like, and recognizing that 90% of the time it came from the church. Just like
a lot of people got upset
like when
they
the Puritans made Christmas illegal.
People aren't
Sorry?
A lot of people got really upset when they were told that they're not allowed singing in church at the moment.
Yes, I saw that.
But like that's a health precaution.
Mm-hmm.
That's not persecution. There's a difference.
Yeah, there is a difference.
People aren't even supposed to be meeting in big groups right now anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
No one's saying like you're not allowed singing in private, or like singing's illegal or anything like that. It's more of just like people trying to keep you safe than anything else. They're not trying to persecute your religion.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter a couple days ago, on the trending list was Toronto is in Canada, which was relating to a headline which turned out to be factually incorrect, saying that like the city of Toronto has banned Catholic churches from giving communion because most of them do like a more like shared communion where like there's a lot more spread infection risk. And Tommy Lauren, who's like a famous right-wing like political commentator in the US, was saying like Joe Biden wouldn't do anything about this. Like Trump is here to protect, your religious rights for places like Toronto. And so that it was trending because everyone responding was like, Toronto is not actually part of the United States. So actually, I don't think he's going to be doing anything about it either way. So
maybe it's like when Trump tried to buy whatever place it was in Europe or something like that. He's like, Canada, can I buy Toronto? Like he's playing Monopoly or something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a good episode. I very much enjoyed it. I'm almost surprised that they didn't give like a warning in front of this one, or at least compared to like Icky Cat, Balti and Bones.
Warning regarding,
well, like the like persecution, martyrdom, and like execution of all the talk about like burning them alive.
I was listening to it and I was like, how do all these kids not get traumatized after going into the imagination station?
Here's a secret.
I was thinking like,
they do.
Surely considering like how offended most parents get at really unoffensive things nowadays regarding
any
like
suggestion
stuff around
of,
their
like,
kids,
violence.
I feel like if Odyssey was real, the imagination station and Wits End would just get shut down for traumatizing their kids.
Yeah. Well, I know. Think of how many people were like on the verge of like death. Think about what happened to like George and Jimmy in Moses the Passover and stuff. I'm
pretty sure George and Jimmy both got like whipped in that episode or something like that. Like, yeah, that kind of stuff can mess you up.
That was the episode where George literally had to ask the question, like, if I die in the imagination station, do I die in real life?
Yeah.
So
I realized when I was listening to this, because this was the first Odyssey episode I've listened to in a while, and I was thinking like, man, I miss like the like little whoa, like when they enter the imagination station instead of like that, and then
yeah. I still really like the noise, but it doesn't have the same kind of prolonged like the classic.
Yeah, no, I don't like dislike the noise now. Like it's becoming iconic, but like it's not as iconic as the original.
Yeah. We got like a little bit of that with Libernus in World of Wittonia when he like took off in it by himself for the first time. And
It's
like,
not
whoa.
the same. And that wasn't the Imagination Station normal.
Yeah, it was the portable one. Okay, so in the video documentary, there's some stock video from Whitcliffe talking about like what they do, and very cool thing, because when they kept on talking about like people being lollards, and obviously my brain kept on thinking about like Phil Lawler, who wrote this episode. And he talks at the end of it, because he wrote it, about the history of his family and how he found out that it isn't just a coincidental sound-alike. His ancestors were Lollards and took that as their name, and then eventually the D got dropped from it. So that is actually where his name comes from, is that it was like a family full of poor creatures.
Full of little Christian criminals. Good for them.
Yeah. So that is pretty cool.
Commit crimes, praise God.
Yeah. Amen.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. That's all the notes that I have for this episode, but yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it, I think, a 4. I don't really have like a whole lot to say about it, but I thought it was like a really interesting historical episode.
Yeah. I mean, like we've said, obviously we've done a little bit of coverage previously on historical eras, like regarding the lack of availability for English translation and access to scripture and stuff, and we saw a later perspective on it with William Tyndale in When in Doubt, Pray. But that also wasn't the focus of the episode. The episode was about like how we see answers to prayer, and it comes in ways that we don't expect. So, yeah, this was like another nice piece to like fit into the puzzle here.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say there was also like kind of tangential reference to that in Isaac the Chivalrous, where Sir What's-His-Face talks about like, oh, in my time, like only the learned holy men have access to the scriptures. What a wondrous time you live in, Isaac, that anyone can read the Bible.
Yeah, that's a good line. I feel like or like Isaac the Chivalrous might hold up better now than it did back then, considering
the Imagination
like,
Station novel.
The Imagination Station novel and the becoming a trope of people actually coming out of the Imagination Station, especially because of the novel making that really stupid. But like
that's
now,
still why with the novels
twist,
I'm still convinced that Wit is just like gaslighting these children, and it's just all in the station.
Probably. Stuff. If nothing else, we can headcanon that as the ending.
We should also rope into this. I mean, we'll talk about it in review again, but like Renee's like a holographic disguise thing outside of the station.
I hate that. I forgot about that.
The completely pointless,
I hate that.
Like kink to put into the plot.
Ugh, awful
completely
content.
Unnecessary.
Awful. But I feel like now, like the plot twist of, oh, I came out of the Imagination Station, I'm real, and then the double plot twist of, psych, that was a lie, you've been fooled, is just so much better now.
Soon kids are going to be shocked when they come out of the Imagination Station and none of the people in there were real. Which is...
Like, what do you mean? I thought they were all real. I thought the dinosaurs that talked were real.
I thought Abraham Lincoln was going to be here the whole time, IRL.
I thought Abraham Lincoln was my best friend. What do you mean he's really dead?
Yeah, which is going to be infinitely more traumatic for the kids once they have to reprocess that, no, those people actually are not real. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Giffany is not going to date you.
Did you give the episode a number rating?
I did not, but I think I'm going to give it 4.8. Very much a fan of the theme, of like the topic that they chose for it, and like the way that it was executed. I thought was very well done.
Speaking of Abraham Lincoln, that leads us well into the next episode. He was mentioned.
Was he mentioned in the test?
In the test.
Okay, I couldn't remember. I would say I think he was. All I remember was Vasco da Gama was like one of the people he said.
It was. Oh wait, no, maybe he was. I think it was Jefferson, Leonardo da Vinci and Vasco da Gama. And I don't even know who that last person is.
Vasco da Gama was a famous explorer, I believe.
Oh, okay. And you know what the thing was? That was the only answer on that test I could have answered because I just watched Hamilton last week.
I could have answered that and the previous one. How many branches of the federal government are there? Which is 3,
2?
Not 16.
3?
3.
Okay. Yeah. Wait. Let's start the other review.
Okay, so
first,
we'll flip over then to Lifted Out of Context. There. So, Lifted Out of Context, episode 873, written by Sam Suxieri.
Okay, so Madison?
Yeah.
Hamilton?
Yes.
Jefferson?
No.
Washington?
No.
Burr?
No. It's not anyone who has a speaking role in the musical.
Sam Adams?
Nope. Good guess, though.
John Adams?
Nope.
I don't
John
know.
Jay. A name that I've never heard in any other...
He's mentioned in the musical, though.
Context. Yeah. Well, yeah, he says, like, Hamilton got together with James Madison and John Jay to write a series of essays entitled The Federalist Papers. The plan was to write a series of 25 essays over a series of...
Oh, okay. I thought
months.
They were talking about something else. I couldn't remember what it was. I got two of them right.
Yeah. Hamilton wrote
so
the other 51. Yeah. Okay.
I can't believe Buddy spelled his name wrong on the test.
Okay. So, this episode is about Buddy, and I guess kind of about Jay, and then it's also about Beezy, who is back from the go-kart episode when Eugene decided to be bizarrely cautious with child safety regulations for once in his life.
I will say I did like her in this episode. I didn't like her in that one. I did like her in this. And then there's like a new guy.
Horace is also back as Eugene's lab assistant from that same episode, and he was also in the deleted scenes of BTV Idolatry, but not in the actual episode. In the web quest for this one, they spelled Horace like the Egyptian way and not like Horase, and I was like, pretty sure that's not how it's spelled.
How do you spell the Egyptian way again?
Like Horus.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I don't think...
He's like the bird one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Osiris is also a bird one, and Ra is also a bird one.
Is he the alligator?
I don't think so.
I'm looking it up. I'm really bad. I'm like good at Roman and Greek mythology.
And Norse.
But I am just bad when it comes to Egyptian mythology. Horus. I think he's a bird man. He is.
He's off.
Okay, he is a beak.
Yeah.
So I was right. Yay me. I finally got Rick Riordan's Egyptian mythology series, The Kane Chronicles, so got it all from thrift stores. I'm gonna read it.
Nice. I was gonna say, isn't that Patrick Rothfuss? But that's King Killer.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lifted Out of Context.
The King Killer Chronicles.
Buddy is wanting to do some skiing with the Trailman, which is another thing that's back. The Trailman and Jay is still in them with Buddy and stuff.
Oh, I forgot about that. I was thinking this feels familiar, but I don't know what.
Yeah.
From.
So
I thought I was gonna dislike Jay in this episode, and there were a couple moments where I said, "Oh no!" But overall, I think I did like Jay in this episode. What about you? Yay or nay for Jay?
He was all right.
He studied for his test. I was proud of him. Also, can I just say before I forget, what are their names? Horace and Beezy. They were adorable. Horace is a very soft boy.
I thought Horace was a kid at first.
He's very, very soft. He gave me big Goggles vibes, and Beezy gave me big Revenger, whatever vibes. I thought it was very adorable, their friendship.
You mean the Avenger as in Connie, not the Revengers as in this episode and Buddy's imagination.
Yeah. They gave me big young Connie and Eugene vibes at camp, like specifically that episode.
As opposed to all of the other episodes with young Eugene and Connie at camp.
All the other episodes where young Eugene is played by 5 different voice actors. But But I thought they were really cute. I was listening and I was like, I can definitely imagine Connie as like a little roller
weird because
skating.
Like I said, I was picturing them as the same age
kid.
at first before I realized that this was Horace. And then I was like, oh wait, this is Beezy and like Horace. That
tall boy. I'm just imagining like to scale like Maury and Honey basically, but not Odyssey Maury.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Odyssey Maury is probably the size of Honey.
Yeah, that's probably So the buddy is too scared to go down the ski slope, so he talks to Beezy, who's like, yeah, on my skateboard, I have Philippians 4:13, and so I can do anything. And he's like, yeah, me too. I'll read, like, Isaiah 49, and now I'll be able to fly down the mountain and do anything, which is...
I thought that daydream was kind of cute. It was like, whoa, look at those eagle wings. And he's like, I won't grow weary. And I was like, this is good. I like it.
Yeah, and he's like, I can take this test because I believe that I'll know the answers. He's like, I'm doing it. It's just coming out of me. I know it.
He was like reciting all the wrong answers. There's like a couple where I was like, oh, I don't know enough about the US to know. Like the first, I think there were like 4 or 5 questions or something like that.
I don't remember what the first one was. The first one was
it was
the
like,
capital
what is
of Nevada.
The capital of Ohio or something?
Well, it was
like
Nevada.
That.
He said Cincinnati, which is in Ohio, not in Nevada.
So he was like listing off these, like the first 2 answers, and I was like, I don't know enough about the US for this not to be true. It's like that quote from
from Always Sunny.
Yeah, from Always Sunny. It was like, what's the quote?
Like, that doesn't sound right, but I don't know enough about blank to know that you're wrong.
Yeah, that. Yeah. And then he said like the Federalist Papers, and I was like, okay, I 100% know that Madison and Hamilton like helped write those. Yeah. So I know you're not right about this. But then he was like, and then the daydream was like, you got them all right. And I was like, but I thought I was right.
Yeah, the first one was like Cincinnati. And I was like, I didn't know that, because I was really like just operating on like the passive assumption that like he was getting the answers right. And if I thought about it for a second, my brain would autofill Cincinnati, Ohio. And then he said like, how many branches of government? And my brain was like 3. And then he was like 16. And I thought like, well, maybe I'm thinking of the wrong like type of divisions. Like, I don't know how many like sections there are, right? Like Department of Agriculture and Department of Education and Homeland Security and stuff like that. Maybe that's what they're talking about. There's 16. But yeah, then he said Federalist Papers, and he's like Leonardo da Vinci and Vasco da Gama. And I was like, but okay, yeah. He's just throwing it at the wall and seeing what sticks.
I was like, I don't know who that last guy is, but I know for sure Da Vinci did not do that 100%. He also did say Jefferson, though, and I was just like, I don't know if that one's wrong for sure. Because that would have been the right time period and like the right crew. It was the right time period.
Except, as you know, Jefferson was in France at this point, because this was...
Oh. Well, I told you before that I...
You forgot which part,
couldn't completely remember at what point.
Yeah, it's during nonstop.
So I couldn't remember if Jefferson was around or not by that point.
And then Beezy's...
But like sometimes when you're watching something, like this has happened to me a lot with RVB, and it's happened maybe with Gravity Falls and a bunch of other things. It's happened to me with Sandersides, where like they drop a lot of facts in like a show, and then you remember them, and then you can use them at school. Do you think like that's going to happen to someone with this episode, and they forget that like everything was wrong that Buddy said? So they just answer all the questions.
It becomes a problem for me with stuff like some AIO historical episodes where it's like mostly based on fact, but they fill in some gaps with stuff they have to make up, right? And then unless you like go back to the source material, you don't know what's actually real or not. And that's the thing. After I finish every Assassin's Creed game, I'll go through, read all the database so I can like learn more about the history and the architecture and the famous people and stuff. But there's always some of it, obviously, that isn't quite true, because there'll be like fictional like characters who are like directly part of the storyline, or they'll be like, and Benjamin Franklin did this thing to like help the assassins like work on this technology or not. So there's always little bits of stuff that's like, oh, clearly that's there's part of game plot that's not real history. But then there's some stuff where you're like, you don't know for sure, and you're like, I don't act unless
It could be right, but I don't know enough about history to prove it wrong.
Yeah.
I'm reading the big book I got in Kelowna, like the Percy Jackson's Greek Heroes.
Yep.
And with this book and then also Percy Jackson's Greek Gods, the framing device is Percy is the one writing on all the characters. So it basically gives Rick full like authority
to be
wrong
narrator.
about anything, and it's not that it's Rick being wrong, it's that it's Percy being wrong.
That's the most great feeling you can have as a writer, is not have to double check anything.
Because like there's a bunch of things where it's just like, oh, this character was at the spa this day, so wasn't here to help this, and a bunch of things like are obviously wrong because they're jokes and stuff like that, like Hermes visiting Theseus or Jason, or no, it was Perseus, and he's like wearing a UPS outfit, and Perseus is like, what does UPS stand for? And you're like, okay, I know this isn't true. And then there's another thing
you don't
like,
know that.
I don't know that this one thing isn't true, I guess, to the myth. But
so,
yeah.
The other part of the story is Horace and Beezy have devised this like crazy Tony Hawk stunt from a book that he wrote that she wants to pull off so she can do some like crazy trick, and she keeps on trying it.
It was like Tony Eagle or
Tony
something
Falcon,
like
I think.
Yeah.
I was like, even when they're directly parodying him, people still can't get it right.
Oh, poor Tony Hawk.
The poor curse of Tony Hawk. So
you look just like Tony Hawk. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Or when they see his name on something and they're like, hey, just like the skateboarding guy, and he's like, yep. I wonder what he's doing these days. So yeah, she's like trying to do the trick, and then Horace goes and talks to Eugene. He finds out that there was like pages ripped out of the book or something, and he's like, I got the full context. And it turns out that Tony Hawk is like, hey, actually, this is purely theoretical physics skateboard tricks, and it should not be attempted by flesh humans, because he's also like a theoretical physicist, I guess.
I mean, we knew that from the beginning of the episode, though.
That Tony Hawk was a physicist?
Yeah, in the context. That's why he wrote the book. That's why the book was only available like in the school system. And you couldn't like buy it, and that's why the book was so rare. Because Beezy was like, I've always wanted to read this book, but I've never been able to find a copy. And then Horace was like, yeah, they only have it in the school system because it's to be used for academic purposes, because he's like a physicist or whatever.
So yeah, and he was like, we shouldn't do this. And she was like, oh, good thing we got the context. So.
Oh, and also they kept on saying like, hey, we'll do an imagination station adventure about this. And I didn't look at the runtime on my phone because I didn't want to see how much was left in case like it might spoil something.
Yeah.
To about do that. But like when Whit first said that, I was thinking like, man, that's gonna have to be like a short adventure. Do we even have time for that? And then like at the end when they all got together and they were all like, yeah, we're about to go in the imagination station. And I was thinking like, how much left is in this episode? And then Chris starts talking. I was like, oh, okay. It didn't really end. Okay.
So, Buddy's, his imaginations in this episode, it's one where they're all pretty, like, centered around the same thing again, which is...
I like it when they're more cohesive.
A very
random.
MCU-specific take on the Avengers, except for Laser Woman, who is just kind of, like, thrown in there, not really connected to anyone.
I kind of got like big Diana Prince vibes.
Well, yeah, that was
just like in the way she talked.
Yeah, I think that was supposed to be the connection, but everyone else was like in the Avengers, and she's DC, so it's kind of.
It was like big green man.
There was like Green Smasher and Captain Columbia, and my favorite, a Serbic billionaire whose catchphrase was like, "I do what I want" or something like that. I was like, wow, there's a real Tony Stark shade coming out here.
What does a Serbic mean?
Just like hard to get along with, like they're kind of like irritable personality. And
I miss Tony.
If you zoom in on the art for this episode, the mask that he...
I haven't seen the art.
The
for
mask
this or last.
that he's wearing in the art is like, it colors aside, it's literally like pixel perfect the Iron Man mask, except he also has like a suit on integrated into like the rest of the suit, like a tuxedo.
Okay, give me a minute. I'm gonna look up the pictures.
But yeah, the mask that he's wearing is just like straight up, like the cut of the faceplate is the current, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe Iron Man helmet. So yeah, BZ came back.
I really hope this doesn't crash my computer.
Horace came back. They've been going a lot harder in the last like year or so on like actually bringing back characters that were introduced as like one-off, one-bit characters.
Oh wow, that's War Machine's armor basically. He just has a tuxedo on.
Yeah, I was like, there's beyond no
like
trace.
I like the art for the Morning Star a lot. It's pretty.
It's funny,
very soft
art like this where there's a real person and Gary Locke will give them like a hyper realistic face, but then he gives the Odyssey characters still like a cartoony face that they're at like different resolutions basically.
My fan is just going crazy from opening the OAC for 5 seconds. The OAC app on the phone is actually so much better now.
Oh, that's good, because the website is still trash.
Yeah, the app's working a lot better. When I listened to an episode, it used to only let me be able to have the episode open, and I couldn't like scroll around looking at anything else. But I don't know if it's the fact that I'm listening to it on my new phone, or if they just changed the app, but it lets me like view other things now, which is really nice. And it didn't crash on me at all when I was listening to it.
So, Katrina shows up, which was a nice surprise, to give the test to...
She has 2 lines.
Buddy and Jay. Buddy gets everything wrong because he hasn't
Jay was in a bush at one point.
He hasn't
Shout out to that.
listened to Hamilton. And I was surprised that, given such a leading line in the episodes, especially how Buddy episodes are, especially with this one, so very full, chock-a-block full of pop culture references with all the Marvel stuff, that they didn't, like, drop some timely Hamilton reference. I mean, they might not have known how timely it would be at the time. Granted, it's more timely now because we're reviewing it 7 months after it came out, but, I mean, it's not like they wouldn't have had time because Hamilton came out like 5 years ago. Yeah, there was other like little discrete bits of MCU shaded, like, I figured out how to defeat you because I took the time gem and I went back in time to see how you would defeat me so that I could undo it and stuff like that. And like, oh no, he got away. Now we're gonna have to fight him for 3 more movies. That was fun.
I was thinking like that one is funny, but also like there hasn't been anyone they've had to fight that long.
No, I mean, like, Thanos has been in the background and pulling strings.
Yeah, like longer. Thanos did not do jack. He just ordered other people to do things. They didn't actually directly fight Thanos until like
Infinity War,
the first part of Infinity War.
Yeah, so. I know, but it was still funny. Yeah. So yeah, even before Wit delved into it, I was like, well, I assume that the adventure that Wit wants to give Buddy is to understand Philippians 4:13 is the one about like the life of Paul, and specifically I was imagining like the second half, which was technically a kids radio program, and only the first part of it that wasn't related to Philippians was the Isaac and Rodney part, which was actually an imagination station. But in my mind,
oh my gosh, the St. Paul episodes are some of my favorite episodes of all of Odyssey.
In my mind,
I love them so much.
The first 2 or the last 2?
Both.
So those 4 episodes, you mean?
Yeah.
I've always assumed in my mind, I guess, that like Wit, that the second part Wit also made into an imagination station adventure.
I mean, probably.
Probably. But... And so I assume in my headcanon that's what they were experiencing at the end there. Mm-hmm. Seeing Paul get shipwrecked and bitten by snakes and all that jazz.
Because like the first 2 parts,
out of the city on a basket.
I really like the stuff with Sam and Rodney, but then the second part, like that kid
Antoninus
and his dad, I really love those 2. So like I just really like the episodes. I might even like the last 2 more than the first 2 by a little bit.
They're both very good in their own ways. And the video documentary shows Nathan Hoopler and Jonathan Crow making all of the Foley for all of the skiing noises in the episode, which they said the only way to get that is to go skiing, which is what they did. So they just did like skiing and just like recorded noises.
Was there a charity this month?
No.
I was about to make the joke that they
The
used the
Jonathan and
charity
Nathan
money to go skiing, and that's how they got the
Foundation.
Foley. But then that's literally what you just said. So.
Yeah. No, they did actually say, I think, that they got to go up on the hill for free in order to record the sound. It also, I mean, I know Colorado has actual mountains because it's Colorado, but at least the hills that they were on in this video were distinctly hills and not mountains that were being skied. Like, the slope was very, like, low grade. So, that is that episode. It always feels weird when it's not a Christmas episode for the December one, I feel like.
I mean, it had snow, so like...
Yeah, I guess, I know December. It doesn't have to be Christmas every time, but it is sometimes, and then it always feels weird when it's not a Christmas-themed episode. But, I mean, granted, this show has made a couple Christmas episodes at this point. There's only so many variations on the theme. So...
I was going to say, like, one day they'll just swap out all the names for other names and just read the same script, but they've basically almost done that a couple times.
Yeah.
So. I liked this episode. Did you, do you know the verse that Chris read at the end? The alien?
I mean, I understood from context that it was, like, God giving a statement of judgment and saying, I'm going to take what you have and give it to foreigners.
Okay, I figured that's
and
what
so she read it as alien. Like, I will, like, take your inheritance and give it to aliens.
That'd be so funny, though, if that is actually, like...
I don't think that is how it is written in any translation. But, I mean, you know, I've read the Bible enough times that as soon as I heard that verse, I immediately, like, knew what the intent was.
I mean, like, I figured that's what it was, but at the same time, it was really funny.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was funny because I was assuming then she was going to explain it, but she just didn't. And so just like,
go
figure
look
it out
up if you want to know. Who is that guy she was talking to? In the booth. He said his name was Chris, too.
Yeah, he did. Christopher Deal, I guess.
Oh, okay. I rated first last time. You rate first this time.
Let me give it a 4.2. As buddy episodes go, pretty alright. Yeah, I was glad that they brought back characters that we thought were going to be a one-shot. There was, like, some fun parody stuff that I thought, like, actually had some, like, fun little quips without being too, like, over the top, like, very, like, haha, get it? We made a reference, so, you know.
Like, the Valentine's one with Trent.
Mm-hmm.
The
last.
What's that one called?
Not the Present Long Ago. The Present Long Ago.
Present Long Ago.
It's a clever title.
I'm gonna go to 4 again. I feel like these were basically on the same enjoyment level for me, but in different ways. Whereas this one was just like fun and stuff, like fun fluff. The last one was more like interesting to me and fascinating. I thought they were both good.
We're both good. So, we need to wrap up this whole year of the AIOC.
Yeah, and we can probably we don't have to cut probably. We haven't been talking about this one for very long.
Yeah, okay, we'll rush through it. Okay, so, to review, Victoria, do you want to
I need to...
get the list open?
I have a list open on my phone, but it has like all the videos in between, so...
Okay, so we can alternate reading off the titles.
Wait, I might have to... Do you have like a list of the episodes you can just send to me?
No, you can just skip alternating down the thing.
Okay,
every other
but we usually rank them.
Yes. Well, we don't rank all 12 of them. When we do all 12, we usually just talk about our favorite and least favorite, I think. We only rank the 6 ones because it's too hard to think about a list of 12 in order. That's too many.
Okay. That's fair.
So
now my iTunes won't close.
We started off
got it.
with In a Sunscorched Land, part 1 and 2.
I thought these were really good.
We're reading the titles.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought we were talking about
Sorry.
them. Between Camp and a Hard Place, part 1 and 2.
We got Rude Stiltskin, wee skinny tail of a small lad, or whatever.
Wee little tail.
Yeah.
Take Every Thought Captive.
All for the Guest.
BTV Idolatry.
World of Wittonia.
Icky and Cat and Balti and Bones.
And The Morning Star.
And Lifted Out of Context.
So.
I'm just looking through them again.
Yeah.
And
so
just giving myself a mental refresher. Should we just go over the episode, just rapid fire what they were about?
Well, we'll do it as we go through them. Sunscorched Land, as a reminder, was the one about Joseph, who Matthew thought was a janitor at his school outside the robotics competition.
Oh, and he was the doctor.
But yeah, he was the doctor in the end. And he tells the story about his village being attacked, and he was on the run with his friends. And they're going around and trying to like trust in God, and then they find the girl, and then they finally like get to the place, and then he
like the friend dies.
He dies right as he gets there, and it's like a lot of it is like drawing allusions to Moses specifically, and he's like, it's just like Moses dying on like the last hill overlooking when they arrived at the Promised Land at the end of the 40 years.
I did not know he died that close.
Yeah, because God said like you'll get to see it, but you're not going to get to go in. So he was literally like on a cliff, like overlooking the entrance.
And then he was like leaning too close, and then he slid down a dune, and
his body rolled into it. Yeah, so on re-listen, because I was so shocked the first time, I was like, I'm the doctor. Joseph really isn't technically deceptive towards Matthew about being a janitor.
He like spills his drink or something like that, doesn't he? And then he's like mopping it up or something.
But like, man, they did a good job of like really well implying it without him making just about any comment to that regard. My favorite thing about the episode still is that when they did the like Promise Neverland reveal that like Malit was the one who was destroying the villages and trying to radicalize young men against him.
I thought you were talking about the anime series for a second. I was
like, I am. Remember? Because I compared it to Promise Neverland at the beginning when we listened to part 1. Because he was like, here, I have this like village of like orphanage where I've taken in all of the orphans to look after them from who've been attacked.
Yeah, but he's not eating them.
Well, no, but then like they sneak out in the middle of the night and overhear and reveal that like he's actually the bad guy. He was the one who did it, and they're like, we need to run away and escape the compound. So I'm still really glad that they did that reveal like as early on as it was, because it's enough of a plot twist that normally I feel like that's something they would stretch out for much longer, maybe like the whole time. But I figured it out like right away, so it was nice to not have to like have the whole story dependent on no one else figuring that out and waiting for the characters to catch up, and instead they just like moved on to other stuff. So I really like that.
I listened to these ones at work, so I wasn't paying 100% attention, so I didn't pick up on the fact that they were like super sketch. But I did really enjoy this 2-parter. I thought it was really solid. Yeah.
In part 2 is when Omir gets sick because they were just drinking like raw water. It's amazing, honestly, that Joseph and Amina didn't catch whatever Omir had, because they were all drinking from the same water sources the whole time.
I mean, weren't they like a little bit sick too, or something like that? Or
probably.
Just, like, not very healthy. Didn't someone's leg get busted?
When they found Amina originally, yeah, her leg was broken, and Omir had to like splint it. I still, the first time I listened to this, I couldn't believe that Omir died at the end, and then it was only once he was like, "But we can see the camp right there," and I was like, "Oh, they're like completing the Moses like allegory and stuff," but I was still really surprised. They're like, yeah, we're going to kill this kid like right at the end of the episode on the verge of success.
It's been a year since I listened to this 2-parter. Because I remember I was listening to it at work last year in the summer while like working on craft stuff.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were good episodes. I was glad that we didn't have to have too much like Matthew interjecting into stuff. Like it was a pretty like focused thing, and like I said, I liked how the plot didn't dwell too long on this twist that like wasn't too much of a huge twist. They're like, okay, here it is. Now we can like move forward and keep on developing things forward, and that like they showed Joseph as being smart enough to like be able to piece that together. It also wasn't like, oh, he just stumbled upon the truth. He like saw the goat with the one ear and was like, that's my goat, but it's already being cooked, and we just made the drive that was that long from my village. So if they had been there after the fact, they wouldn't have had enough time to already cook the goat after making the drive back, which means they got it before, like, after the attack was done. So they were the ones who did the attack. Like, I really liked that it was depending on him actually putting the pieces together and not just like, doop-de-doop, I'm a kid. Ooh, what's that? Someone's talking. And then, like, he drops on them, spilling the beans on their plan.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool.
Between Camp and A Hard Place, this two-parter had some pretty good heartfelt stuff. Definitely not my favorite of the season, but it had some good content with, like, Wit talking to...
Wooten, you mean?
Yeah, Wooten talking to,
Wyatt.
What's his face?
Yeah, that was probably my favorite of the three plot lines through this episode.
Mm-hmm.
It showed a lot of, like, emotional and spiritual maturity on Wooten's part, and I really like it because it's one of those ways that they used to do a lot with Wooten, like back in the early days, where he's doing something, well, even earlier than that, where Wooten's like doing something that on the surface we first see it and it looks like he's kind of being like goofy or naive, but then you realize that there's actually like a lot more thought and depth into why he's doing something the way that he's doing it, and you realize like, oh, I underestimated him. His Connie calls,
but like him and
Wyatt.
I forgot his name again. Thank you, Wyatt. Have like big Wooten Grady energy.
Yeah.
Because like Grady and Lawrence are pretty much like, if you put them together, you basically get Wyatt.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of Wyatt's characterization, and basically all of it in this episode, is centered around like his father not being around. Mm-hmm. Which obviously in the later episodes for Grady was a significant thing that's been dealing with
3 o'clock call.
Yeah.
And then like course, with Lawrence,
the highest stakes, and Our Father.
Like Father Like Son?
Our Father.
Yeah.
Like Father Like Son is the one with the Myers. When
right.
Daddy Myers gets out of jail.
There's too many episodes in that album with the word father in them.
That's in 16, the other one's in 17. Because Like Father, Like Son isn't in the Lord's Prayer.
I mean, it is now.
Yeah, I really like it because Connie at the beginning, she kind of like, not condescendingly, but she like says to Wooten like, don't you realize like he's just like making excuses to like not have to go to bed and like keep you up to talk. Like, Wooten, you should realize this. And then he claps back with like this surprising response of like, yes, of course I realize that, but he wouldn't be doing that unless there's some deeper underlying reason that he doesn't want to be going to sleep, and clearly he's not ready to talk about it, so I'm going to make myself available to him until he feels that he's at a place that he can share that with me. It's like, that's the good Wooten content that we want.
And like the girls in the episode, there's some pretty good content with them too that I liked.
Yes. So
I feel like the first part was like kind of weak, and then I remember we both really liked the second part because it just, everything felt really like just random in the first part, like nothing connected, but then it wove together really, really well.
So we had Scarlett, who is like, I really want to be on Survivor Wilderness Challenge, and this camp is not what I thought it was going to be, but then it turns out that she's actually really poor and doesn't get to do anything, and that's why she was so excited about it. And while she like tried to put on an air of being super privileged, that she was more like, this is all that I have, is like what is here, and I want to hold on to it. And then there was other girl whose name is not coming to me, and she was the one who was like super like quiet before, but then when she's with Zoe, she's super outgoing because her family adopted a whole bunch of kids with different needs in the last year that made her like really appreciative of the privilege that she had in being able to do all these different things. It makes Zoe realize that it's not just about the competition, but she just be enjoying the opportunity to do this
She
stuff.
was like such a sweetheart, and
She
I
was
don't
really.
know why, but I remember that she kind of gave me like big nominee vibes. I don't know why. I think it was maybe her voice and like how gentle
So,
she could be.
A lot of the plot lines for both Wyatt and Scarlett centered around like lack of internet access, which at first I was like, okay, we have to go through this again. I did realize later, I was like, in terms of like Camp What a Place two-parters, like this is kind of like a callback to album 5 where we have Allison with the TV. And I was like, it is funny when you make that connection, how like with Allison and the TV thing in album 5, it was like this very like comically hyperbolic kind of thing. Like, I brought a TV in my suitcase so that I can watch it while I'm at camp and stuff like that. Whereas now, because technology has changed so much, it's absolutely completely reasonable that like you would have your phone and be able to expect to have like coverage out there. I still maintain resolutely that having no cell coverage over the campgrounds is actually terribly dangerous in the event of an emergency.
Yeah.
Even if it's like just for the counselors to be able to use if they have, if someone has an accident, they have to call 911. Tree lands on someone in the woods and no one's around to hear it.
Yeah, I remember we kind of got after them in the first part, but then in the second part, why it was like, I like having cell coverage so I can make sure like nothing bad's happened to my dad while he's away. And we were just like, ooh.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah, dude, that's pretty solid.
And like, obviously, there must be at least landlines in the office, but in the event of a natural disaster or line goes down or like anything that separates someone from camp, like getting lost or a wildlife attack, armed intrusion, fire, a flood, whatever, they have no way of calling for help. I really like the way that like Scarlett called Olivia out on her privilege with regards to like commenting on Scarlett's situation. She was like, Olivia, I understand what you're trying to say, but you do not understand where I'm coming from, and you don't have like the ability to appreciate my situation. And like, it's nice that you want to be sympathetic, but you have to understand that you can't be empathetic to this.
I feel like most people have that problem. I've definitely made that mistake in regards to things before, and I probably will in the future still, but it's good to get called out.
Yes.
And let yourself get called out.
And that's how you
learn.
A lot
of people don't let themselves get called out.
Da, da, da.
It's always something that's good to work on.
Yes.
Rumpelstiltskin, A Wee Little Tale. I thought I would hate this one.
Oh, wait, sorry. Oh, yeah,
really
the other thing,
they're
like, I was like, clearly there must be a landline in the office. But then they're like, there has to be Wi-Fi in there. I'm trying to connect to it with my phone from the outside. And I was like, in fairness, maybe it's just because of their age and they don't understand all of the ways the internet works. But I like the idea that they're like, the camp must have access to the outside world somehow, which means that internet must be wireless and must also not have any password protection so that we can get it on our phones from outside. There's no such thing as Ethernet. There's no such thing as, like, secure Wi-Fi.
I mean, I didn't know what Ethernet was until I was out of high school.
See, I would justify that. The idea that they could get onto the Wi-Fi without a password seems unlikely to me. Unless they were just going to spend all day sitting there, like, guessing.
We good to talk about the next one? We've been spending about like 8 minutes talking about everyone.
It always gets long.
Okay, Rumpelstiltskin, yay or nay?
It was, like most of them, better on the second time through. Excuse me. It's still a little campy and weird that they just...
Oh, it's definitely campy and weird.
Weird that they decided to introduce like a random relative for Holstein to like replace him.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
that
as the narrator. It was kind of a weird pull, but otherwise, yeah. I mean, it had like that theme at the end. They should have just
put Hans in the episode.
Where Renee was like, here's the surprise theme that's actually surprisingly deep about how you need to know and understand the nature of evil and be able to name it in order to understand it and guard against it. And everyone was like, oh, that is deep. And I was like, dang, that is a good theme.
This episode got progressively better and better as it went on, and I came out of it really, really enjoying it. Plus, like I said back in the review, that this episode did a couple things with the fairy tale of Rumpelstiltskin, which I have never seen any other interpretation do,
Mm-hmm.
but I have wanted them to do, and this episode finally did that stuff. So that made me pretty happy. Like, the daughter calling out like everyone on all the bad stuff they did,
Uh-huh.
like including the dad.
Yeah.
But then the daughter also getting called out because like no stories I've read really like
Mm-hmm.
punish the daughter in any way. They're like, "Oh, you did this bad thing. You should be punished, and so we're gonna take your kid away." But then the story ends with like her always winning and like Rumpelstiltskin getting murdered or running off or whatever. And in this, she actually did get chewed out a little bit, so that was nice for me. Do you have anything else to say about that one?
I don't think so.
Or also, I just like Renee and Jay getting to do like acting
Uh-huh.
stuff, especially Renee because she hasn't really done much, if any, of that stuff so far
Mm-hmm.
in the series that I can think of. Take Every Thought Captive. We both really like this one, the Valerie one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is
Yeah.
this the what was she in, the Inspiration Station?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited that we actually got to have an episode where Valerie was the protagonist, and they did some good stuff with like the ways that they talked about like feelings of insecurity and self-deprecation, that like even when she knew factually like that this is true, that it's a lie, she still couldn't shake it because she felt so like depressed about herself that even though she's like factually, I know that I'm not like these bad things, that it's a lie, and yet she still can't bring herself to believe it because she's so internalized that self-deprecation in terms of like depression and stuff. And it's like that is true.
It was a really good episode. It was pretty relatable. I really loved it. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten any more Valerie content since this episode.
No. Well, we might have.
So
There's
we
2 whole
can't
albums
really...
that are out that we haven't heard
We
yet.
might,
So.
but not that we've listened to.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, we can't really speak on whether this was like a turning point in her development or not.
Because it's the AIOC, I feel moderately doubtful. I mean, they've done things that, while they haven't necessarily carried over, have held general like canonical importance, like telling Charlotte's backstory in the AIOC and stuff like that. Gives me more faith that, you know, we'll actually get to see things have more meaningful impact. Or Jay coming back to Odyssey, which happened in the AIOC, and then he's shown up again in the numbered albums since.
Yeah. So I'm basically just gonna stand by what I said in the review, which was I'm cautiously optimistic in regards to her development. All for the guest. Some Bradford and Penny's parents.
Yes.
I have listened to this one since the review a while back still, but I have listened to it again, and I love Bradford so much.
Yeah. I still have the complaint about how, like, at the end of the episode, we're kind of left with, like, Frank and Bradford have this compulsive need to serve others, and they're, like, unable to relax and allow themselves to, like, be cared for by others, which other episodes have addressed is, like, not a healthy mindset to not be able to take a vacation from, to practice self-care, or to be able to, like, serve others and also be served, so that you can, like, fill up others and be filled by them, and in exchange. And that they're like, no, the only way I can relax is, like, if I keep on serving people and have to keep on going, and that's unhealthy if you, like, keep on doing that perpetually without being addressed.
So 2 things. One, I just realized I didn't re-listen to the episode. I re-listened to our review of it, actually. And 2, in the last Sandersides episode, this is relevant, I promise, called, like, Putting Others First. It's all about, like, selflessness versus selfishness. And there's a point where the discussion comes up that about, like, different types of philanthropy and stuff, and how, like, there's different types of giving, and there's one, I can't remember specifically what type it's called, but it's saying, like, if you only have, like, 25 cents in your entire, like, bank, basically, that you have, that's all the money you have, and then you give away, like, 15 cents to charity. That's like incredibly generous, but it's also incredibly stupid, because if you can't take care of yourself, then how will you ever be able to take care of others and stuff like that? So like make sure that you're in a good spot before you take care of others, because you might just end up hurting yourself more in the process. And if you're not in a good like place to take care of others, then in the long run you're not going to be able to do anything worth of value to them in the first place.
Yeah.
So
it's like the oxygen mask thing, right? Put on
yeah,
your own oxygen
that's
mask
actually
before.
Yeah, they talk about that in the episode. Yeah, they use that as a metaphor. So and then they also talk about like when you're losing oxygen, so you can't like, what's that word?
Hypoxia.
Yeah, hypoxia, which is great because I started listening to Black Box Down like 2 weeks before that episode came out. So I was like, I know what hypoxia is.
I was so glad that they represented that scene accurately in The Incredibles 2.
I found out yesterday, because I've been watching movie analysis stuff, that if you probably know this already. In fact, I might have even known this and I just forgot. In space, if you get like knocked out of like a safe area and you're just like floating in space and you have oxygen in your lungs, then that like throws off your like weight and stuff, and then the oxygen goes into your blood, and then it blocks off like your veins and stuff like that, so your blood can't move properly, and then it kills you. And so Titan AE, this movie done by Don Bluth, which I watched for the first time a couple nights ago.
The Michael Jackson one? Or is that EO? No. Captain EO is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. It's like Matt Damon, and it's animated, and it came out, I think, right before Anastasia did. I was watching someone talking about it in an analysis, which I turned off after 10 seconds, because they're like, Don Bluth, the guy who made Secret of Nima and Fantasia, and then I turned off the video. And I was like, what is this?
It's not throwing off your balance, by the way. It's the pressurization of the gases. It's the same thing as getting the bends, but more extreme. Of
so
gases
like there's a scene in Titan AE where they're in a spaceship and the glass starts cracking, and then the main character is told to exhale. And so he does, and then they like break the glass and then go out into space. And then
like whenever you hear talk about like someone being exposed to space, they say like your blood will boil, and basically that's what they mean. Is it's not like boiling in a temperature wise.
Freeze, or actually no, it's not all cold in space. I also learned that from the same video, that it's either pretty cold or pretty hot depending on where you are.
But the point about boiling isn't about temperature, it's about the fact that like without the pressure that the gases dissolved in your blood will become gaseous.
Yeah,
just
and
like
I always thought it was
does
like
if you come up from diving too quickly and gives you the bends.
I always thought it was really unrealistic in Guardians, where like Gamora goes out into space and then she doesn't have covering, and then she like starts freezing and crystallizing, but she doesn't die.
Yeah.
And then the same thing happens to Peter, but I found out it takes like half an hour for you to die from the cold if you don't have protection in space.
Half a minute. But
yeah. I thought it was half an hour.
15 to 30 seconds.
Oh, then why didn't they die in the movie?
It was about 15 seconds, and also like neither of them are human, fully at least. So.
Oh yeah, I guess I didn't think of that. I guess Peter's half god.
Yeah, so he definitely has the excuse.
Never mind. Anyways,
so
All for the Guest was good. That's what we're saying.
BTV idolatry. There are so many great bits in this episode. The Idol Apple keynote is great.
That was good.
I still think that the return of Gifts from Magi,
continue.
Is a bit of an odd choice for the plot, but like the recreation and the joke callback executions are really top notch. They are top notch, top shot.
I did get a little bit of the vibe where it's just like there's a reason why the story ends when it ends, because you don't want to see the characters be sad because you know that like no story ever truly ends, so there's going to be moments where they're sad. And then I was like, oh, I'm listening to have them having marital issues and it's making me so depressed. But they got through it. Good for them. It was a good episode. It felt like I'd definitely say the BTV like went up in quality, and then it went down in quality starting around, I want to say redeeming the season, but that episode's way older than
it came out album 34.
Yeah, exactly. So like around the hiatus it just started like dwindling,
like pre-hiatus, you mean?
No, like after the hiatus.
Well, yeah, because there was also like a gap.
Because like BTV Temptation is in 49, and that episode is really, really good.
Yeah, and then there was a gap of like almost a decade between BTVs.
Yeah, and then there's BTV Live, which sucks.
That's also in there. Yeah, that's true.
Too. Actually, not all live shows. Hashtag not all live shows. Like New Year's Eve Live.
Hashtag all live shows matter.
I don't want to talk about this anymore. But yeah, the BTV shows have been getting better in the past couple albums.
Yeah.
World of Wittonia, we already kind of talked about this.
Yeah.
Had some good stuff, had a lot of garbage.
It's an interesting balancing act, is what it is. I still think that the episode, for a one-parter, does a really excellent job, moral-wise, at capturing like a way to recontextualize why God did what he did in the Garden of Eden and how that connects to Jesus coming as human incarnate and why that happened. And it does it in a way that's pretty theologically well done, but it's absolutely...
It made Renee a dinosaur Jesus
absolutely
hologram
at
woman.
the cost of having a plot that is utterly nonsensical and moderately campy, and I won't get over the insane reach of wits like IRL holographic disguise thing, which makes
there's just
no
this
sense.
This episode did have some good things, I will give it that, but it had so much stuff that just boiled my blood like I was in space.
Like I said, they did the morals so well, but it absolutely came at 100% of the cost of the plot.
Like Icky and Kat and Balti and Bones, I really liked this episode.
I had a lot more appreciation for it after getting your whole like dissertation on the accuracy and like commenting on it and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I realized after the time we talked about it in the last episode, you never actually said what did they change in the end from the original.
Oh.
Is it just that Kat like sent Bones away and didn't end up with him? Because you talked all this stuff about, like, oh, I liked what they did with it, and they did the stuff they changed, but you never actually said what was changed.
Whoopsie!
Which I didn't realize
I guess I got
until I was editing.
Distracted talking about everything else.
Yeah.
So, Katrina ends up with him at the end of the original story, because I don't remember if they say, like, directly, but, like, you can pretty much imply, like, with Ichabod gone, she's 100% going to be with him. Also, like, Ichabod sucks. I don't like Ichabod in the original story at all. So, like, the fact that Katrina doesn't like him in the episode, I really liked. Because she's, like, I mean, for all we know, she's into him in the original story. It is kind of from, like...
They don't really give a lot of weight to what she wants, one way or the other.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, that's why I really liked the fact that Katrina was pretty much, like, the main character in this. Because she has zero agency in the original, and she's basically just a lamp.
That's shocking.
She's just basically a sexy lamp. So, yeah, the fact that she, like, doesn't want to be with either of them, and that she is with Brahms, and then she, like, breaks up with him at the end... was just so good for me personally.
Okay, I figured that's what it was, but I didn't know if there was anything else.
Yeah, so, like, that's the main thing. Like, the original story ends with Ichabod going off into a different area in the U.S. I think they said, like, New York or something like that.
Something like that,
and then he went into, like, politics and married this wealthy lady who likes to cook or something like that. And then, like, Katrina just... I don't know. They don't really, I think, talk that much about Katrina, but you can pretty much infer that, like, she's going to end up with Brahm if she's not with Ichabod. Because literally no one else in town went after her because they didn't want to have to challenge Brahm. So, yeah. Because either
They
they
didn't want
all
to have
liked,
dogs attack them every time they read the songs.
yeah, they either liked Brahm a whole lot and were like in his posse, or they were scared of him. So no one tried to go after Katrina except for Ichabod, basically.
Yeah, once again, a very
Yeah,
Gaston kind of
yeah.
situation.
So I'm glad you appreciated my English litness.
Yeah, and I like enjoyed the song construction and stuff more. Like you were correct. The Headless Horseman song was sung by Gregory Jabara.
And he did such a good job.
He did, yeah.
It was such a good song. It still
Yes.
is uncomfortable for me that
Yes.
the main character is named Katrina and is played by Jules.
Being
Even
romanced by
though
Eugene and Buck
who else
simultaneously.
who else would Katrina be played by? Because if you think about it, if they really want
That's what I said last time, because then it'd be
like
Buck.
literally the only casting they could have done was Eugene for Ichabod.
Yes.
Like nothing else would have worked. So like on one hand you have Katrina as Katrina, Buck as her love interest, and Eugene as her other love interest, or you have Buck as one love interest, and then Jules, and then Eugene. So just like no good way to do it, basically. And we had to have like Shona in there.
Yeah.
Because of the group, so.
So that just brings us back to the 2 episodes we already talked about. We had Morning Star, good historical story about a person I didn't know about, covering an era of history that we haven't really talked about that much, and very well done. Kind of like heavy atmosphere to it, with an important theme. And then we had Lifted Out of Context, an episode with Buddy that brought back some other characters. It wasn't like too over the top goofy, and had a good theme in it. Obviously one that we've covered before, and I've covered that specific verse before, but still, it's good content. So overall for the album, I'm going to say my favorite, I think, was BTV Idolatry. Probably. Yeah. Least favorite, probably World of Wittonia, I'm going to have to say.
I know what my least favorite is. I'm just having a hard time figuring out my favorite. My least favorite's also World of Wittonia.
I like how you keep calling them dinosaurs.
Well, they look like Barney, so like...
I just like how, I think we just have very different mental images of them.
When I think of dinosaurs, I think of Barney.
No,
I don't think of actual dinosaurs.
No, I know, but why you're comparing them to Barney?
I don't remember what they look like. They just looked like Barney's.
They had weird colored skin. They had a tail, but were otherwise pretty humanoid. And they had at the elbow there was a forearm with a hand, and it breaks off into 2 forearms with 2 hands. So they have 2 arms, but 4 forearms and 4 hands.
I don't like that.
No, I don't either.
I'm just gonna keep on thinking of Barney. That's way less uncomfortable for me. I'm torn between Rumpelstiltskin, In a Sun-Scorched Land, and Take Every Thought Captive for what my favorite was. I'm having a hard time choosing between them.
So I will go with Every Thought Captive and Sunscorched, you said?
Yeah. I think I'll go with I don't know which one to go with. You talk for a minute.
Yeah, I think the shining thing for me about BTV Idolatry was not only did they have a lot of clever parodies and different aspects that they came up with it, which is the hallmark of any good BTV episode, but they took the idolatry thing and did a really good job of capturing the practical ways that it applies to our lives now, and not just the way we think of it in a biblical context, which I think is something that has really only kind of been covered otherwise in a little bit in Hidden in My Heart in album 26, but that really wasn't the focus And they're talking like, bow down to the statue of our founder, which is still like they were doing it in a very kind of like weird cultish way that is still like kind of like obviously idolization, and not as much in the way where it's really practically applicable to everyone, where they addressed it in the episode, where they're like, look at your watch, look at your wallet. They can tell you like, where do you place value based on like how do you spend your time, where do you invest your money. And because I think that those are the two things that are like, that speak to the most about like where your heart lies in like the most literally practical way. And so the fact that they like addressed it in that specific way, I thought was very good.
Time and money, I just thought of that John Mulaney Kingdom Hearts post. I gave Nomura, so you might say, I gave Nomura 18 years of my life and hundreds of dollars. I was a child. Nomura tricked me. I lived like a gosh dang Ninja Turtle. I subsided on Kool-Aid and fruit snacks or whatever.
I subsided on Pao-Poo fruit and sea salt ice cream.
Okay, I decided which one my favorite is. So, for Rumpelstiltskin, yeah, it is kind of campy. The second half's a lot better than the first half. With Take Every Thought Captive, I just kind of wish they went like a little bit further with some of the things.
Yeah.
Instead of just like no one knowing who Valerie was for basically the first half.
Yeah, I feel like they
stuff.
didn't have enough time to like really get deep into like the world that they were setting up there.
Yeah, like maybe, I don't know, part of me wants to say like maybe if it was a two-parter, but I think it works best as a one-parter.
Yeah,
because it might have gotten way too heavy.
I feel like
if
it would have
they
lost
did a two-parter
focus if it was a full two-part.
Because like in that case, the first part would have mostly just been world building, and yeah, I'm gonna go with In a Sun-Scorched Land as my favorite. I think it was really, really good, and I really liked everyone in it.
The last 12 months that you listened to it.
Yeah. I think he was really solid, and like I didn't see it coming at the end that he wasn't like a janitor, and I thought it was told really well, story-wise and message-wise, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Okay. Overall rating for the album. This one, I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna give it a 3.8 out of 5. I feel like, on average, I didn't like most of the episodes as much as like some of the last couple years of AIOC, where it had like a lot stronger hitters, like outstanding.
Yeah, for this season, I'd say I either alternate between straight up not liking some of the episodes. For the majority of them, I'm just like okay with them. The only 3 episodes that like I'm really torn between were my favorites. Everything other than those 3, I think could have had a lot of things that were improved on.
I would say that Morning Star, I guess, would have been my runner-up.
Yeah, Morning Star and Lifted Out of Context were both pretty good. I think Lifted Out of Context might have been like the strongest morally of the season, like one of the strongest morally. I'm gonna say like 3.5.
Cool. So, next episode, as we continue to very slowly bulldoze our way very quickly through our theoretically normal schedule for recording, we're going to jump right into album 68 now. So next episode we'll be covering the first 2 episodes so that we can get through 68 so that we can hear album 69. So we already did our predictions a couple episodes ago, so hopefully that'll come soon now that Victoria's done her exam. Squeeze everything out before she has to start her master's degree.
And I'm thinking, no promises, but I'm thinking we should be able to record again this week.
Cool. I will prepare. All right, so until then, thank you for joining us on our side of YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Maltzner.
And my throat is very sore.
And you've been watching The Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.
Bye.